This material is a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's Oral History Program Living Legends collection. The only original date we have on this material is the year 1956. This material is a soundtrack to a collection of films taken on a trip to Russia by some Oklahoma farmers. The narrator of these films is Mr. Grover McMakin. This material was re-recorded on the 29th of October 1985 for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program by Judith Michener. Mr. McMakin was one of the farmers who made this trip to Russia in the year 1956.
There's about a half a dozen out here tonight trying to work this business. And you buddies of Corky's, I hope you'll enjoy this film, Trip to Russia, which cost me several $1,000s. You're all going to see it in a few minutes for nothing. We'll start out here with a little resume. This was sponsored by the Daily Oklahoman, 29 of we farmers and ranchers, which was the first group individually to go into Russia without a government sponsorship. And we was in Russia 21 days. Of course, we saw as much as we could. We carried in our own film. You can't buy film in Russia, and I only had 21 rolls. And I tried to make them go as far as I could, which by 10 o'clock every morning I was out of film, and some of the best pictures could have been made later, but I didn't have enough film to take everything I wanted to see. So you boys, we'll turn on the picture here now, and this will be the beginning of Reel 1. Takeoff. I'll try to name some of these individuals, which I know you fellows don't know, but you might possibly. The boy with a white hat, well, that's Roy Shove from Cherokee. Henry Hitch from Guyman. Bill Kinder from Waurika. Dick Grant with the glasses on. That's the old stud there with the hat. This is in Oklahoma City. We had lots of publicity everywhere we went, and that's me and my granddaughter there, Diane. Roy Stewart is a boy with a light jacket on. He's the boy that has charge of the trip. We had lots of publicity, radio, TV, and everywhere we went, even in Russia. And this is the afternoon. We left Oklahoma City, which we went to New York and left there the next day, which took us into Helsinki for the next night. And then Helsinki, we went into Leningrad. That's my wife's sister and her husband and my granddaughter. That's my wife in the middle, Corky's mother. And I'll try to describe this to you. This is a new deal to us because I'm usually showing the pictures and editing them. And I hope you boys can understand what I'm talking about. These airplanes, you boys will be just as familiar. That's me and my wife. If I'd put you in one of my corrals out here with a Bremer bull, you'd be just as at ease as I was riding in one of those airplanes. That's just about the difference, because I don't like them. But this is the afternoon that we left Oklahoma City, and when we get back, well, you'll see the film when we arrive back. Here's a few of the individuals: Clarence Birch, Jane Newstat, Ard Moore, Clark Moore, Nowata, Phil Ferguson, Woodward. I guess I missed the rest of them. I think Roy Stewart will be up here in a minute. He's the boy that has charge of us. And what a job he had. That's him right there. That's the boy that had charge of the trip. Now, this is in New York. Of course, we had a terrific night that night. We was forced down by storms twice, run out of gasoline once. And this is New York, and of course I had my camera trying to find an American, but I couldn't, and you see what I got there, just a bunch of odds and ends. And lighting was very bad. Here we are at LaGuardia Air Base at 5:30 in the afternoon. Had a special bus to take us out. We was boarding the airplane to start to hop across the whale pasture, we called it. That's a hell of a long ways across there. It's 3/5 a Canadian club. Now, this is Helsinki, Finland. This is the next morning, the first morning out of New York, which we'd wasted a day, and according to the clock. This is a very prosperous-looking city. Attache. Colonel Blitz, I believe he was a colonel, and his name was Blitz. His wife, Betty, took me and 2 other boys and showed us Helsinki. We had 4 boys that didn't have their passports into Russia, and we had to wait till we got to Helsinki to see whether they could get in or not. And we finally did, but it took a call to Moscow. But Betty took me and Hank White and Dick Longmire and spent the whole morning showing us Helsinki, which it was a wonderful trip. And we enjoyed it very much, wound up at her house, meeting her youngsters and her husband and her neighbor. And because the Russian airplanes, the airflow from Helsinki to Leningrad only accommodated 21 passengers. Now, I'll have to get off just a little bit here. This is the Kremlin in Moscow. My film is just a little mixed up. I jumped from Moscow to Leningrad, but this is inside of the Kremlin in Moscow, and this is inside of the old Kremlin building where old Bonaparte and all of them's old carriages, and I was trying to take some inside pictures with outside pictures, which didn't work. But this business hadn't been open for the tourists too long, and you can see a lot of Russians even enjoy coming in there. Those domes, those gold domes there, I can't explain. You boys probably know. I can't explain just what they are, but they all signify something. That tallest one is the old lookout where they used to have the board wall around the Kremlin and the moat, and one of their enemies got across that moat and burnt the wood wall down, so they have this brick wall around it now, about 40 feet high, and I'd say at least 10 or 12 feet thick. And this is inside of the Kremlin. Of course, you see these policemen like that boy there, and there's the old St. Basil Church in the background. I'll have a much clearer view of that in a little later in the picture. This gets back to Leningrad now. This is in front of the stadium, and this is the first collective farm that we visited. Pretty cold and dreary out there. Now, you'll notice those buildings, they look like they got sheet iron or metal tops, but it isn't. It's a plastic top. You can just take your fist and knock a hole in it anywhere. And this collective farm business is a long story to that. The difference between a collective farm and a state farm. The state farm, everybody works for the state. The collective farm, they share in the profits. You see the machinery, copies of our machinery, all of it, exact copies, except run down, wore out for the lack of maintenance. We could see they don't know how to maintain the machinery. Here the machinery is sitting out in the weather, and yet they got plenty of sheds, but all their sheds are empty. All those buildings, they don't have nothing in them. And the machinery is sitting out taking the weather. In our country, we try to keep the machinery under the sheds, and we could find so much machinery that it just looked like it might be a year old, yet wore completely out. This is some of the mechanics. That's some of their plows there. Now, this is in Leningrad. That is the Neva River. This is the Hermitage, the art gallery that we're in front of now. We just got through going through that. So that's the Neva River, and here we are. That's Judge Corn, John Steiking, and here's some of the children. And we found them always ready to pose for pictures. Older people, you could hardly take their photographs because when you'd see you turn the camera on them, they'd duck their heads or they'd run or get away from you. That's the policeman with the gray uniform. That's their soldier with the khaki there. This is a hotel we stayed in Leningrad. If you notice the people, how fast they walk, and I mean they're going somewhere, I reckon, because they're all in a hurry. And you see nearly all of them carrying a large satchel or a bag. That is to get their groceries. You see, they have no paper. They don't have paper sacks like we have in this country. And all their groceries, they buy them and put them in those bags. Raw meat, potatoes, carrots, unwrapped bread. Well, they just don't have paper to wrap. So that's an oddity because we're so used to paper all we can use in this country. This is a stadium in Leningrad, and they go in for sports, and they showed us all the red carpet treatment that they could possibly show us, the stadiums and their sports and their kindergartens or high schools. And you see those people wearing those old boots there. I always thought they were kind of an army officer boot like we used to have in this country, but they're not. It's a plastic boot, the tops. They're not leather at all, and you'll see all of them wearing them. And I believe this is in Moscow now. This is a park in Moscow where we stopped trying to get a picture of these two old ladies there with those shovels. They were just working like the dickens. They turn over every foot of soil they have and cultivate it, put it in something, turnips, radishes, onions, something to grow and eat. And you notice these people, how in a hurry, how unconcerned they are. I kept trying to get pictures, not letting them know, and I didn't let them know there. Not letting them know. Anytime they'd see you taking their picture, well, then they'd get ready for it. There was a building in front of the hotel where they'd been repairing the side of it. This is in a little kindergarten school. These are little stainless steel beds, and that's their dormitory there. Of all the pictures I've seen and since read about, everybody sees that same school. And this is the teachers there, and that, of course, the gentleman in the middle is one of our crowd, Mr. Dwight Ferguson. But there's your teachers and our interpreters and guides. There's two of them. You'll see them here together in a minute, Vala and Sophie. That's them. Sophie with the blue coat, and Vala was one had the red coat. They were our interpreters and guides in Leningrad, and that girl with the blue coat, Sophie, she rode the train with us to Moscow, and then we picked up 3 more interpreters and had them all the way on the rest of the trip. Now this is on top of the stadium in Leningrad, supposed to hold 100,000 people, and I expect it will. It's a huge stadium. Highway right around the top of it where the bus drove right up across around the top, and that's where we got these pictures. Now this is in Moscow, and it shows you when the sun comes out how these people flock. They have lots of parks. And just let the sun come out for 30 minutes. Well, the parks will just be full of people. They're just hungry for sunshine. Now, this scene right here is the National Hotel, and then the subway station. That's how come so much traffic here, is they're going in and out of the subway station. Now, here we are on the Red Square. There's the old St. Basil Church. Here's the Red Square, and there's the Kremlin. See all those people lined up. There's your Muslim. Those people are lined up to go through and see Lenin and Stalin, which we went through. They don't go through there to see them through curiosity like we did. They go through there to worship them. Here's the gum store, G-U-M, and it's G-U-M initials. It's the biggest store in Russia. And those little cotton dresses there for a little girl like 7 or 8 years old, $120, and Tolley shoes, $65, and ice boxes, $600. That's how high everything is. It's so high the people can't afford it. Now there's your St. Basil Church, which they have taken away from the church and making an art gallery out of it, and it's a beautiful scene. This St. Basil Church, which they have taken away from the church and made an art gallery out of, and the Red Square which we have seen so many in our newsreels of the all communist parades and whatnot, where Stalin and them stood on top of this mosque. And the people that you've seen lined up there in the picture, they're going through not to pay their respects and curiosity like we did. They go through to worship those cookies. That's the cold cuts, and we went through. To me, Lenin is a wax figure. Stalin, I was convinced it was him, and the old booger kind of wanted to raise up and wink at you because he's a natural-looking cookie. But Lenin, to me, it just could not be. He's been dead since 1924, and I'm convinced he was a wax figure, but I went through with one of the communist boys, McMakin or something like that, and I said, Alec, do you think that is Lenin and Stalin? Oh, Mr. McMakin, definitely. Well, he didn't convince me. Cut it. Now this is the starting of Reel 2. This is a state farm. You'll see a lot of pictures on the walls, and of course that's one of the rewards for these people doing outstanding work. They get their pictures made. And there's a slug of them there. That's old Doc Goulner from Wichita, and he was the greatest character we had. Took care of all of us. You see some Holstein cattle here, which are very, very large. You can see by the size of those people how big the cattle are. The bulls gets exercise. The cows, they stay in they keep them chained on about, I say, a 30-inch chain year round. That's gentleman Hoffman from Brooklyn with me having a picture made there. But here they're talking about their hens laid so many eggs and their cows produce so much butter. And they're always going to talk about they're going to do more. They've got to do a hell of a lot more to produce enough for the people to live on. There's some of their soldiers. I don't know what they're doing there. Here's chickens, thousands of them, running loose in the pen, and yet they told us that they had an individual record of every chicken. We caught them in so many things like that, it finally got to be funny. We'd question them, and they'd comment, well, we know what every hen, what each hen, how many eggs she lays. This is a kindergarten. That's where little mama's children is taken care of while mama's down there hoeing corn or planting turnips or something. They all work. They don't have no unemployment in Russia. That's what to brag about. It may not be nothing but holding a goat or a milk cow, but they've got something to do. There may be 3 people watching a milk cow, and right here you're going to see a silo with a ladder in it and a bucket. Well, it's an automatic deal where the woman walks down that ladder, fills up that bucket, walks back up the ladder, and feeds it to a cow. That's their automation in their country, and they think it's wonderful. We'll show you some of their automatic milking machines here directly. Everything is done automatically according to them. Here's an old pony, and he doesn't even have a single tree. His tug is hooked to the end of the axle. You see, these dairies, they have no refrigeration. They just milk, put it in the cans, and haul it to the decentralization station or trucks. The milkmaids, of course, they're all dressed up, especially for us. Now, that's not even screen wire around those milk cans. It's just chicken wire. And they don't know what refrigeration is. And we never had a piece of ice all the time we was in Russia. We couldn't get it. Here's an example right here. See that wheel on that machine? I'm just trying to show that how worn out their machinery is just from the lack of maintenance. We take a piece of machinery like that in this country and run it several years, but over there they don't even, undoubtedly I don't know whether they have enough grease or what, but their machinery is all very, very wore out, just everywhere we look, just from the lack of maintenance. And I think my machinery is in bad shape, but when I seen what I seen over there, well, there's a big irrigation pump, and that guy doesn't even irrigate. He's got a pump. That's our two interpreters there. The tall one is Larissa. Little short one was Sawyer. Now here's the farm manager with the felt hat on, and that's our interpreter with the light coat and blonde hair. That's Gregory, and he was a Swedish character. He cried when we left. He would give his right arm to come home with us. Now there is a Caterpillar type tractor. I never saw one exactly like it, but look at that track. That is a lack of maintenance and lack of know-how. And that old boy was just working and piddling. He wasn't doing a darn thing. But there's one of our old 4x4 Dodge trucks, which all of their machinery is copies of ours. The International 41, 42 2-tons, GMC and International, 28 and 29 Model A's and four-cylinder Chevrolets. And they're producing those. Well, that's all they're using. They're reproducing them. That's old man Gorky, the statue. Now here is the A&M College in Moscow, and that's the president. Talked pretty good English, and they just treated us royally that evening. They answered our questions, and then we answered their questions. And we spent the whole afternoon, and this is the A&M College of Moscow. I forget what they called it. We had students around us everywhere, and a good many of them could talk English, asked lots of questions. And we was treated royally everywhere we went. This is back in Moscow, and I just shooting some film to use it up out of my hotel window, and that might get you a slant on how dirty your hotel window is. Now, those living quarters, everything above the ground floor is living quarters. That's not office buildings, because they don't have insurance agents and real estate agents and whatnot. No competition over there, you see. So everything above the ground floor, which is the shops, everything above the ground floor is living quarters. Now, this, I believe, just a minute. No, this is on a state farm. This is what we call the Lenin farm. That's a vodka drinking this old cockroach there with that little lapel button on. There's Chuck Blotz from Missouri. He was expelled just about 6 weeks after we come out of there. And you seen that old well pump there. Now that means that whole community carries water from that well. We went through this home, which is very, very, my grandparents didn't live as rough as these people did. And we know that's the best home in that community, or they wouldn't let us go through it. This is on one of your collective farms. That's the bus that they carried us out there on. Little old kitty, just cute as a bug in kindergarten. But these people are still cooking on a little old charcoal stove, and the old lady there was showing them the cellar. I'm sorry I didn't go in. I stayed outside taking these pictures, and she is just thanking us, and come back. And some of the boys told me that she only had about 2 bushels of Irish potatoes in that cellar. It's a very obsolete little old type of home. Here's one of the union halls where they all meet and set the policies for the farm according to them. Now, this is down at a Kharkov. That monument you see there, the Germans had 40,000 Russian prisoners, so they tell us, and they killed 900 of them. And that monument was to those 900 the Germans killed. Here's Simmental cow, S-E-M-I-T-A-L, which they call a new breed, and I guess it is. It's a beef animal and a dairy animal combined. And those cows weigh about 1,800, and bulls that size, you look at that old boy there, about a 6'6". Those bulls will weigh 2,500 pounds. They claim they have raised them and produced them, but they have imported them from their conquered countries. We saw more bicycles right here on this one farm. We're saying all the rest of Russia. That's Dick John taking a TV picture. A lot of you people may have seen that. Look at those old oxen there. Now, that old man is a pretty big man. I'd say those ox are 14 hands high. And they still work a lot of oxen, water buffalo and oxen, horses, but most of the work is done by women. That dog, those women do it all. Now, this is Kiev. This is the prettiest town we saw, and kind of a little embarrassed here. If you see that girl way across the track over there, she had an air hammer. Of course, I thought you could see her right there, but they don't know what Braziers is, and that gal, and she's pretty nicely uttered up. And that air hammer, boy, it was something, but I just too embarrassed to take a good close picture. Now, here, that old boy in the uniform, he's a member of the Presidium, which is one of our congressmen or senators in this country, and he had self-propelled machinery, lots of it. And he had the best farm that we've seen on the whole business. Of course, it looks like a little politics is involved. They had a wonderful place there, and you could tell they were getting along. And these, I believe they call them horse. That's an American girl right there from the Cleveland Tribune. There's one of the old tractors that they were discarding. They're done wore out and useless. But here's a bunch of drills that they were pulling behind these crawler tractors. And this old cookie, and there's two plows just come in out of the field. This is beginning of Reel 3. I'm sorry I don't have it all spliced together. And Kiev is a beautiful city. Wide streets and those trees blooming. This is a shot from the hotel window. This will give you a little bit of an idea how everywhere we went, we were swamped with people. Now, I know how these movie stars must feel, because we got so tired, we couldn't get in our bus, we couldn't get in our hotel. Yet Kiev had nearer our kind of people than any place we went in Russia. There's one thing that I haven't mentioned before, and I tried to bring it out here in one of the pictures. Stainless steel teeth. My gosh, they don't treat teeth or fill them. They just pull them and put in a stainless steel tooth. Now, this is Valdemar, which I just learned lately. Valdemar was Lenin's first name. And this is Valdemar Park, and we're up on a very high hill. I can't think of the name of that river, but it was overflowing. You can see all the bottoms in there was flooded. They had just got through having a celebration, and the pictures in the background there is all the old kingpins, which most of them is in Siberia now. This is Kharkov. Now, if you notice all those buildings, they're not occupied yet. They're just being reconstructed. Since the war, that's the mayor of Kharkov in the middle, the architect bareheaded, and the assistant mayor with the hat, and Roy Stewart with the light jacket and bareheaded. That's Kharkov University. Not even completed yet. That's since World War II. Of course, the Germans, they said, come through twice and scorched earth policy, and they pushed them back twice. Those little youngsters like that, we give them balloons and chewing gum, and they didn't know what to do with it. This is a little miniature train. Not exactly miniature, but it's a small train. There's an 1,100-acre park. And those kids learn how to operate those trains and do operate them on weekends. Now, this is a collective farm where there's 1,300 people, and there's 980 of them women. There's one of their automatic milking machines. They're always bragging about it, the automatic milking machines. The little old girl just as pretty as a picture, but they milk 4 times a day, so they say. Here is where they presented Roy Stewart with a 90-pound cake, and now these hogs, that white male you'll see in the center of the picture there, my estimation, he'll weigh 1,000 pounds. And they'll have sows that I'll say weigh 700 and 800. And I'll prove it to you in my estimation. Like that sow right there, you'll see women over here be 6 foot tall right there. See them driving those sows, and look how tall they are. And there's the old stud duck of the farm, and he posed my picture and then thanked me. But that's another one of their Simmental cows, which is a beef and a breed animal together. And they do have something on that. And here's the way they exercise their bulls. They work one, lead 4 or 5, and I'd say there wasn't a bull in that crowd that weighed less than 2,500 pounds, because they're just as big as perching horses. And they didn't like we Americans, I don't think. That old boy on the left sure wanted to get to us, and they show us this little fella, and they bought him over here in Oklahoma, they claim, when the Russian farmers was here, and they didn't like we Americans, I don't think. That old boy on the left sure wanted to get to us, and they show us this little fella, and they bought him over here in Oklahoma, they claim, when the Russian farmers was here, and he come into Russia, and he was diseased, but they finally got him well, and now they're using him. But this is the way now, between our hotel and our bus, everywhere we went, I mean all over Russia, not, this is just 1 or 2 examples, but they just swarmed us. Of course, our hats and our boots and our good clothes, they'd feel and touch us, just feel our clothes, and they just couldn't believe it. This is out on a state farm now, right out of Kharkov, and they put on quite an exhibition. That's the only bunch of sheep that we saw all the time was in Russia. There's Rambouillets. Of course, they demonstrated those trotting horses. Now, this is the way they exercise the bulls. The bulls you seen a while ago was, that's probably 200 miles from where these bulls are. Of course, they put that Hereford bull in to improve their butter quality, and they got a Jersey bull in here to improve their beef quality. I don't think the boys know where they're going. See that little old Jersey bull there? They said they was going to improve the beef quality. There's a bunch of hogs, I'd say, weigh 300 pounds apiece, and them old women are herding them. This little one-legged boy here, he had a cork leg, and he's had charge of the farm. He spoke pretty good English. And we was his guest that day for luncheon, and he was a perfect host. He was the most decent, level-headed one we had. Now we've left all the farming country and gone down to the Black Sea. This is Sochi, on the Black Sea, which is a country that they took away from Turkey. I hope my history is right. You soldier boys may know better, but see the old woman back in there, sweepy, sweepy. Here the woman is digging the hay, 4 or 5 of them, and the old truck driver up there under the shade of the tree. He doesn't drive the truck down to get the hay. They bring the hay to him. And that's Ted Workington, myself, and Judge Barbie. This is a resort. We're there early in the season. That's Dick Johns with a TV camera. That's Phil Ferguson and Doc Goulder. This is Ted Workington and Judge Barbie. And this is a hotel we stayed in. They just opened it up. Here are 3 guides and interpreters. That's the best picture. Sawyer with a red dress, Gregory and Larissa. And Gregory was a honey. Sawyer was a little hellcat, but she was a head duck. I wasn't supposed to have these pictures. I learned after I took them. This is a naval base, and Gregory announced that morning that we wasn't supposed to take pictures. Now here we are going up a canyon. It was kind of a hideaway deal for Joe Stalin like Hitler had. 600 foot deep. I'm sorry I didn't have enough film to take it all, but it was a beautiful sight, all-day ride with the bus. And then we come out on the other side down to Sakumi. This is where we're at. This is Sakumi. That's a little television girl that's been with us. This is a tea farm, which takes 6 years to get in production, and then they live 55 or 60 years. They gather the tea leaves every day. And this is the only tea farm I ever saw. I ever saw. Here's a place we couldn't get across this stream on account of the overhang on the back of this bus. And they rode us in on these little cars. The Turkish blood still predominates there. These people just come out of the woods. We don't know where they come from, but they just happened up. There's the little old cars, and they took us in. Here we are drinking champagne, and I mean, it's just as good as a Frenchman makes. We had a wonderful dinner, and this is the last dinner, last party we have in Russia, because we fly back to Moscow and then come out. There's the manager of the farm right there. You'll see some hogs here in a minute. It's lots of difference what the hogs you just seen in the previous picture, and they've got these fenced out instead of fenced in. Here's the tea farm, the old water buffalo. Marvelous tea factory there, but we could utilize it so much better. Now we're out of Russia. I run out of film. I'm sorry, but that's all I had, and this is in Sweden. This is a cooperative college. You see the American flag there in the middle, and boy, you don't know what it means when you don't see that flag for 3 weeks and you come out and see it. This little professor, he gave us a lecture that morning, showed us pictures. That's him right there. What the cooperative does in Sweden. Boy, they don't ask you what you'll take and what will you give. They'll tell you what we'll take and what we'll give. It's a pretty good deal, and those people are getting along. And of course, Stockholm that night, we had ice water. We kept one boy busy just bringing us ice water, because we hadn't had a drink of ice water since we went into Russia. Of course, the only trouble with those Swedes, they drive on the left side of the street. And brother, you just don't know what that is till you get over there. But this was a beautiful city, and they took us out and showed us the sights. So we're leaving here, going to Frankfurt, Germany, which Corky is going to meet me there, and he did. Our railroad is right on time. We'd been gone about 5 weeks, but we was due in Frankfurt at 4:30. Old Corky was right there to meet us. You boys may not know him as Corky, but that's all we know him by. You all know him maybe as Grover S. Of course, this is after we left Frankfurt, going out to his air base. This is one of the German Autobahns. That's a beautiful country, and those Germans are getting along all right, too. Don't think they're not. There's Corky and his old man. I'm going to call him Corky. You boys may know him as Grover, but to me, he's Corky. He's my baby boy. That's his buddy, Don Carver. That's a man, his daughter. Well, here we are, old Fred Drummond from Pawhuska and Ed Kennedy from Pawhuska. There the 4 of them are. I expect from here on in this picture, here's Cork's base, I expect from here on Corky could probably tell you more than I can, but being I'm running these film, I guess. Of course, we hadn't had a good steak since we'd left America, and we went out to Corky's base, met all of his superior officers. Some very cheap drinks, too, if I remember, where we got by for about a dime apiece. But we did have a wonderful steak, met Corky's officers, and we went back to Frankfurt that night, 65 miles, but it didn't seem near that far. So then the next day we took off on, so we took off, and this will be on Reel 4, which takes us into, I believe, Paris. This is part of, our speech may not be right with a picture, but this is part of Cork's air base. If he don't agree with what I'm saying, well, he can contradict me and I won't dispute it. Beautiful scenery out there. Well, this is the next morning. We drove about 35, 40 miles out of Frankfurt by boat, Wisbachen, if I can remember the name, and we was going to board a boat down the Rhine River, which we rode till 6:30 that evening. Now, all these little old cockeyed straw hats, Cork here, somebody will have to describe that to you. It didn't mean nothing to us, but seemed that everybody, well, I just know darn well Cork can describe this to you better than we can. But there's those vineyards, and rock walls, and castles, forts, and I know Cork knows more about that. There's old Fred Drummond. Some German had swapped him out of his Stetson and swapped in a little old straw hat. This bunch of cookies right there in the corner of that boat sang all the way down that river. Those German people seem to be happy. So this is going down the Rhine River, and I know Corky can describe it better than I can, or whether he can with these film or not. It was beautiful sights. And commerce on that river, good gosh almighty, it was worse than the TP Railroad switchyard in Fort Worth. It's just a lot of transportation. But we rode down the river, and it was a dark, misty, rainy day. I'm surprised my film has turned out as good as I have. But you can see those castles back in the woods there, and the old forts. Of course, this time we'd come out of Russia and was already tired, was wore out. There's a bunch of sheep watering. And this is a beautiful country, but we're just getting so doggone tired that we just couldn't appreciate anything. I couldn't. I was wore out. Now, you just travel day and night, and those Russians drove us so hard on our tours. This is in Amsterdam, Holland. But those Russians just drove us so doggone hard, they just had us beat to death time we come out. And this stuff here, well, we're just still semi-conscious. I was just so tired and wore out. This poor old cookie here, he posed for his picture and everything. We didn't even tip him. I know that's what he's looking for. That's where they're pushing the ocean back and reclaiming it. This is a little old island or something. I don't know what to call it, but strictly a tourist town and 1,200 people. I know most of you boys have seen it. Hope you have. The rest of this film is going to be pretty dull, so if you boys want to go out and get you a beer, I'll just take off, because it's not going to embarrass me any. I'm going to take a drink myself directly. The time we got this far was getting pretty well worn out. Now, you can travel so far and see so much, and the old mind goes blank. That's kind of mine, and This is a shipyard in Amsterdam. And I always thought that old business there was just an ornament, but it isn't. They're really grinding feed. That old windmill is a power, and they're grinding feed. And here the farm is 13 feet below sea level. So that's not bad. Our trouble down here is getting water on the land, and their trouble over there is getting water off of the land. All those big canals, they're pumping that water out. Of course, this King and Queen of Edinburgh was due in the day we was there, and this street was decorated for 'em, and oh hell, just traffic jams and everything else. We didn't get to see 'em, but we was just in a block of 'em because our bus got where it couldn't go, and we had to walk. But we visited the flower auction that morning. 7.5 acres under glass. And it's an auction. I never saw anything to equal it in my life. Because, boy, they bid and they ship and fly and import and export flowers all over the world. Of course, our clothes kind of here's where the King and Queen were just a block ahead of us going into this hotel. The traffic was blocked, so we just got off of our bus and walked to our hotel. Bicycles, my God, they have them in there by the millions. Well, I'm a little embarrassed here because you boys in the Army have seen all this. This is, well, I think it's just, yeah, this is out of sight of Paris. I didn't have nobody but these guys here in my living room. I might call that park, but I kind of think it's Versailles. And it got where we're so doggone tired of traveling, it didn't mean much to us. Let's just get it over with and let us get back to Oklahoma. But it was a beautiful sight. Of course, by that time, we could buy some film, and, you know, I run out in Russia, but when we got out of Russia, well, Court met me in Frankfurt and brought me a bunch of film. And incidentally, just a little Canadian club, too. That sure saved my life. All the rivers was overflowing everywhere we went. So, Clark, when you get into these films, you just want to shut them off and tell the boys goodbye. It'd be all right with me, because that's kind of the way I feel about it right now. Because I don't know enough history, and you boys probably know more than I do. Just Jim sitting over here asleep now. I don't know what this is. Damn mess looks like. You can tell what that is up yonder. That don't look like Russia. You wouldn't see that many automobiles in all of Russia. All of you know what that is. I'm not going to try to describe it. How you doing, Mr. Jim? Yeah, I know, but hell, ain't no use describing that to these soldier boys. Well, I might be, but I can't describe all this stuff. I don't know enough history. This is the Louvre, and that's a little Arch of Triumph, and that's Notre Dame or Notre Dame. So there's two Arch of Triumphs, one little, now here's your Buckingham Palace, and yeah, this is Buckingham Palace now in London. Yeah, it's beautiful around there, but gosh, them people living in the past, they let it be blank, 'cause As far as I'm concerned, it's blank anyhow because this kind of stuff, it didn't register. Now, this is Windsor Palace. No, not Windsor Palace. What do they call it? Duke of Windsor's place, the Queen. That's where she lives now. 4,800 acres of it, I know, and gosh almighty, beautiful. We got quite a kick out of them old boys, a stomping and a pouring, and they wore the marble out on the sidewalk a foot deep. I don't know when they're going to replace it. Then we went through Eton College, which is just down under the banks of this, and of course, they say that, well, that's Eton right down under there. They say that's where the war was won, on the Eton College playground. And this is London now, back in the old two-story buses. In Russia, could you sure use that? Their transportation is very inadequate. And here is Sir and Mrs. Thomas Godfrey. And he's a duke from Wales. He has 128 acres and 30 cows and a beautiful little ranch. There's a nice host. They didn't know what our hats and boots was, and we sent them a hat for her and a pair of boots. No, boots for her and a hat for him. They're flying the American flag, and they were wonderful hosts to us, and took us down to an old inn and served us a wonderful meal. That's some of its cattle there, one bull. And they knew how to entertain, I'll say that much for them. Clover, most of the cattle there, everything you see them eating there was clover. But they were wonderful. That's her bust in the background we just seen. That's Sir Godfrey right there talking to Ted Workington. But we sent him a hat and sent her a pair of cowboy boots, and then Christmas. Okay. After we left this Sir Godfrey Thomas's ranch, we went to Melbourne, England, spent the night, and was on the way to Herefordshire for a three-county fair, which I thought would be about like Carter County, Oklahoma. And good God, when we got there, it was a bigger fair than the Dallas Fair. And in this coming film, you're going to see some of the finer animals in their country as you're going to see. So here comes Reel 5. We're still just a little bit on Sir Godfrey's ranch. That's his associate there. We give him a Hereford pin, and he was sure proud of it. That's his herdsman with a hat. That's Sir Godfrey and his wife with their backs to us there, and that's Roy Stewart making his welcoming speech. So the little old couple sure could entertain. That's their automobiles, which shows they wasn't getting along too bad. This is the hotel we spent the night in Melbourne. That's not Melbourne, Australia. That's Melbourne, England. It's up in the kind of edge of the mountains. Beautiful little town site. No electric lights, no modern conveniences. But we enjoyed it at that. Now, here we are coming into the three-county fair. Very, very rainy, very, very muddy, and stuff you'll see in front of us was cross ties. Instead of pavement, it was cross ties, but here's the machinery displayed. That thing, I'd say, in the Dallas Fair, it's twice as big. And here they are displaying their animals, and boy, you're going to see some good beef on the hoof. Of course, I was almost perfect on choosing there. I picked number 5 in this class, and he is number 5 right. Number 1 was I just missed him 5. There's you see your Hereford cattle, and there was a Hereford Association, and boy, did they welcome us over there. Everything was perfect, and high balls, and that's the way they show. They're out in the open. It was a good show, and we enjoyed it very much. It's just too bad. We just had about 2 hours, and we had to get back into London to fly into Glasgow to finish our tour into Scotland. But they had some wonderful animals. But they don't judge them like we do on crooked hind legs or line backs or high tail heads. I believe bone and size is what they go on. They don't judge cattle in that country like we do. So we left this place. We had to rush. The little old bus driver, there's a little girl there. She's a judge of the Angus cattle, and she done a good job of placing them. But after we left there, here we are now. Drove from this show into London, caught an airplane into Glasgow, and rode a day by bus from Glasgow to Aberdeen. And this is out of Aberdeen, which we spent the last day in Europe. And this is a beautiful country. Jim Taylor there with his back to us, that's him. He's our tour man. The little fellow there and the other bareheaded boy was our Aberdeen secretary. Here we are out on a big estate of Angus cattle. I'm going to show you a bull here in a minute. There he is. 8 years old, never defeated in the show circuit all over Europe. Still just 8 years old. But they don't breed and won't let them breed artificially. So that bull is through. If they'd breed him artificially, he might be good for 2 or 3 more years. But that's the greatest hunk of flesh that I ever saw in my life. Weighed about 2,400 pounds. And this was known as a Wallace estate. Not Wallace, Watkins. There's a manager with a bareheaded light coat boy. He's a wonderful horse, too. But there was the greatest bull I believe I ever saw standing on 4 feet. This is a Highlander. That's a long-haired cattle. That poor old boy that was seen there a while ago bareheaded, he was off over there in that grass, wet, knee-deep, trying to get him up for us to take a picture. Now, this is on the Wallace estate, and that is Mrs. Wallace. You just seen there. We're all up the side of this film, side of this picture, kicking up pheasants everywhere we went. This is the last roll of film I had, so I was just kind of shooting the whole side of the hills and everything, just thinking, well, this is all of it. And if I'd have just only saved 20 feet, one of the most beautiful sights we saw on the whole trip, but I didn't have any film left. But anyhow, this is the last film that you're going to see, and this is inside of Scotland, just out of Aberdeen. Last film you're going to see of mine, because that's all the film I had. I just taken a panoramic view, thinking this was all we was going to see, and if I'd have just known what we were going to see later, I'd have saved some film, but I didn't, and I made a mistake. So this is all these houses. This Mrs. Wallace, of course, he owned ship lines and airplane lines. We met him later in his big mansion, which I didn't ever dream would get to see. So this is the last of the country scene. Now we're in Aberdeen. We're checking out at daylight in the morning, getting ready to go back to Glasgow and Prestwick. And here we are, and my film is so dim. That's Roy Stewart. Oh, I can't make the film out here now. That's a chauffeur there. Then I would go back to Prestwick that afternoon. No, go back to Glasgow And then it's just a 45-minute drive from Glasgow to Prestwick, just about sundown. We'll take that big hop across the whale pasture, heading back to New York. Now, here we are in Oklahoma City. The dark pictures you're seeing was on Friday, and this is on Sunday. We jumped from about 60-degree weather to 110. I had a little bit of film left, and here it is at the Lazy K Ranch, just using up the rest of the film so I can send them off and get them developed. 110 degrees, everything burnt up to a crisp. Quite sickening.
Tell me about your hotel accommodations.
Well, there's mattresses with just old cotton mattresses sunk down in the middle, little bitty old light bulbs, which we don't use in this country. Couldn't get hot water. Oh, they were good in that country, but they're very, very poor in this country.
Your food, what do you think of their food that you have to?
Oh, the iced potatoes and raw salmon and sour cream salads. We eat 4 meals a day when we first got in. I finally got where I could eat meat once a day.
The industry that they're permitted you to see, did you think that they compared favorably with this country?
We didn't see any industry that started compared to this country. No steel. We saw buildings just cement and brick. We didn't see any steel. Of course, the embarrassing part was, or maybe the wrong part was, we didn't see no young men either.
Tell me what you saw in the way of highways and railroads.
Well, we rode 2,800 miles deep into Russia, and the railroad was double track except across the Caucasus Mountains. But the railroads is in very bad shape. The rolling machinery was very bad. The road bed was very bad. I'd say 40 miles an hour was the extreme speed for our train. And flying back 2,800 miles, we did not cross a cement or a transcontinental highway.
You had occasion to use their airlines. Describe their airplanes and their airports.
Their airplane was an exact duplicate of our DC-3s, except with bigger motors. Their airports was dirt and concrete blocks, not concrete or asphalt pavement, but blocks. But their motors on these old airplanes, which we seen boots in their tires, they didn't warm them up, and they just rev them up. Their airplane was an exact duplicate of our DC-3s, except with bigger motors. Their airports was dirt and concrete blocks, not concrete or asphalt pavement, but blocks. But their motors on these old airplanes, which we seen boots in their tires, they didn't warm them up, and they just rev them up and take off and then cut them back 30% when they was 20 feet off the ground. But the airports, we landed on dirt, and every airport we saw in the entire trip except in Moscow. And it was in concrete slabs, which just bucked and jumped. So we didn't see another paved highway. At Sukhumi, when we took off from the airport there, they had the old Army deal that we'd give them as not a, whatever you call it, a signal deal, tell them take off. But it was one of our old Army trucks out in the middle of the field, on a dirt field, and we took off in his signals.
Is it your feeling that the people of Russia want war?
Definitely not. Everywhere we went, they told us no atom bomb. God bless America. We heard that everywhere. Say something,
Corky? Hello, this is Speaker Black.
Well, if this is good, it's because I've been telling them how to do it, Corky.
That's a fact. I'll verify it.
Hello, Corky. Hello, Corky. Hope you enjoy these pictures, you and your buddies. We've had fun making them. Took about 8 of us to do it. Be looking for you and your buddies Thanksgiving. Good night.